If you can hear this, if you can see this, you are the resistance. Skynet became self-aware and used our own nukes against us. Blew most of the human race to kingdom come. Now it's created machines to finish the job. If you're to survive, you need to recognize them. The worst are the Terminators. Flesh and blood over a metal endoskeleton. You can't talk to them, you can't reason with them. They don't eat, they don't sleep. They're relentless. They won't stop coming until they get you. My name is not John Connor.
Nope.
Come with me if you want to play.
Welcome aboard. It's now March and we are into the first part of the Terminator Genisys Slow Grow Force Creation Challenge. If you haven't already, head over to their Facebook group. I've left a link down below. Grab yourself a copy of the rules, and also there is a brand new resource guide for checking out STL files and other manufacturers for proxy miniatures and model kits and the whole load. So you can build up a force and join in. So I dived into my pile of opportunity, as they like to call it around here, and found a load of stuff that can be used for endoskeletons. That's the basic troop type for Skynet. We need 10 of them all together for the challenge. I actually have more than that. Mine, fortunately enough, are actual miniatures from the game. I did buy quite a bit when it was going out of print. On each sprue you get enough for 2 of the endoskeletons plus what they call a crawler. Now, just because a Terminator gets blown apart doesn't mean it's going to stop coming after you. There are enough in the pile for 10 endoskeletons plus the 4 that I already have made up. And I've got a few extra bits as well. Let's just separate them. I did find that I had quite a few crawlers that I just hadn't made up yet. So we will be doing something different with them. One thing that I did realise when going back through the force list was that I'm actually missing some of the heavy weapon endoskeletons. So I will reserve 1 sprue so I can make 2 heavy weapons boys and another crawler to go with them, so I've got 2 crawlers for spare parts, and the rest of this lot will just go into basic troops. I also have here some other sprues. Now, these are Games Workshop Cadian, and I am going to be using the weaponry from these to convert those ones into the heavy weapons variants, and I will show you how to do those very shortly. By the time we're finished, these will have been converted into the heavy weapon variants. These will have been made up into crawlers and endoskeletons, all essentially to this stage with basing material on the bottom. That is builder sand that I use. It's got more gravel in than normal beach sand, so it makes for nice rocky rough ground. All good. Then I'll show you some painting guides. I'll show you how I make mine so that the bulk of the force is going to be all the same as the rest of the endoskeletons I already have, but I can use some of the crawlers to show some variations on paint schemes that I've heard other people using. Okay, diving straight into the conversion. First thing I need to do, obviously, is to get some stuff off sprues. So from this one, I am after the grenade launcher and the flamethrower. The grenade launcher is going to be getting turned into the rocket launcher. Having a look at the picture, they are reasonably similar. And on this sprue I need the flame tanks. Actually, I've just realised that there is another piece and it's a backpack that I'm missing, so I'll have to go back to my sprues box and grab one of those. Let's get these off. Actually, I don't know why I'm cutting the arms off, because I don't need them. But I do need the torsos. So that's the Terminator parts. Move them to one side. I get the feeling that everybody is going to recognise these vile things. Thankfully, we don't need to use them all that often now, but there are some nice interesting shapes on the end, and so I need 2 of these for the rocket launcher. But I'm going to use the plastic pipe for the barrel, which means I need to fit that in there. In order to do that, I have a drill bit. Just hold on to it and then very gently widen the hole in there, just so it will take that pipe better. Do a test fit. Yep, that's good. Check. Oh, we'll give it a barrel about that. And then about that much off. Just hold it on the end there, shave that down better. And I've already drilled this one. I'm going to take a longer piece off here for the barrel end, trim it straight, and then we want a notch like that and a notch like that. That goes on there and that goes on there, and then that will fit on the end of the grenade launcher. Now the other thing I need to do is remove that human hand and just tidy that up. Get rid of the flash along the top and the sprue excess, and that Imperial insignia is going to have to go. And in this case, because GW does make their emblems very prominent, I'm actually carving it, and now I can get to scraping it flat. So that is ready to be assembled like that, and I will use the top part of an arm from that crawler, pop that on place there, and then that will fit onto one of the larger endoskeletons. Now this flamethrower looks absolutely nothing like the flamethrower from the miniature, but it should suit my purpose fine. Now I get the feeling I'm probably going to have to replace this plastic pipe with a piece of wire, because I highly doubt that it's going to fit properly on the backpack. And again, just need to take that Imperial insignia off. Same deal, I'll attach an arm from the crawler and fit that on. Now, yeah, that needs to be cleaned up quite a bit. The one thing that I do need to address, however, is these skull and crossbones. Now, I could carve them off, but I think rather than that, and the reason why I would just be carving them off is because, let's face it, Terminators wouldn't care whether or not there was any kind of toxic chemical. So what I've got here is just a little bit of scrap packaging. That's about the right length, but I need it slimmer that way. And then that will just basically glue as a plate straight over the top of that, obscuring that skull and crossbones. Right, I will get all of this glued together and then get them based, and we'll get on to painting. Okie doke, so all of the models have been assembled. Really pleased with the way those conversions are looking. I have used a little bit of blue tack just to hold pieces in place while the glue was setting, but after that they're holding together quite well. And as you can see, I've also applied the basing material. As I said earlier, that is just builder's sand, and I've stuck that down using a little bit of water, very slightly watered down PVA, not watered down too much, but I have added just a drop of detergent just to break the surface tension up and get all of those small granules to actually stick on properly. Now it's had a black undercoat. I always enjoy seeing the result when the undercoat has been applied. That's the point where any kit bashes or converted models that you've done, especially if they've had differing materials or colours of materials. That's the first point where it's all nice and uniform and it brings it together as a completed model. Why use black? Well, black is the preferred undercoat if you're using a metallic, because that's what really makes it leap out and pop and really shine. Speaking of shining, the first top coat has been done. So this is again a spray paint and it's shining chrome, rather appropriate for Terminators, and this is the one that I always go for. Apart from those, and we will get back to them in a minute, I have also reserved two of the crawlers unpainted, just so that I can show you some of the different techniques that other people have said that they use, you know, just so you've got a choice of how you go about it. Now, in all cases, they tend to use a brush method rather than spray cans. I guess in some cases it's more a case of whether or not you can actually spray paint where you are. So this is a dark metal. This one's a GW bolt gun metal. I've heard it called pewter or graphite in other places, and we're just going to get a coat over all of that. These endos, or rather the crawlers, are pretty fiddly, and you can see I'm not exactly using the greatest brush in the world, because this is just for a all over base coat, so I'm worried about coverage rather than detail. Obviously, if you were doing your Terminators in this colour scheme, you'd have time to get the whole force done before you moved on to the next coat, but because I've only got the two, I am going to leave them for a couple of minutes just to dry off. So next coat for both of these is a wash of some kind. So essentially what it is the good old classic undercoat, wash and then dry brush scheme. We'll turn him over and get the underside done first. Now in this case I am using a flesh wash because some people prefer to give it a sort of more rusty kind of colour, and on this one I'm going for a black wash. Again, give those a chance to dry. Okay, in coat is dry on both of those, and for both of them the final coat is exactly the same, and that is a dry brush with a brighter silver than the one you originally used. So get that on there. That just brings back out all those raised detail areas. Make sure I get his face. And an awful lot of people would say that is pretty much job done. A little bit of spot of red on the eyeballs and that would be a completed Terminator as far as they were concerned. So these things are not difficult to paint in any way, shape or form. Move these to the side, and I've got one of my own there for reference purposes, and I'll show you how I do mine. Now, one thing I'm not going to show you is the method that is shown in the rulebook. That calls for 14 separate coats of paint, and I would lose the will to live on what is essentially such a simple miniature. But seeing as how you've copied or you've downloaded a copy of the rulebook, you should be able to get that and read it yourself. Now, the first thing that I do on these miniatures is the bases, just to get them out of the way. What I will do, I will show you how to do one, then I'll go through and get up to the same stage on all of the miniatures, take a photo so you can see the progress, and then carry on with the next step. So for bases, when it is large unimportant areas like bases or buildings or terrain or things like that, my go-to is not model paint because that is expensive. I use household paint, and this is a test pot of straight black paint, and I've watered it down ever so slightly, and that is just so that it will get and soak onto the sand and get down into it. And again, I'm not using a brilliant brush because the sand is just going to abrade the bristles. So that's the sand area done, and then I'll use some of the neater paint, not watered down, just to go round the edges like so, and that's the first part for that one. Now we're after another dry brush of a light grey, and again I'm just using household paint just to finish these bases off. So it is a quick once around the outside edge just to catch all of that, and then do that inside area, and just take a bit of care if there is any of that silver showing through, just go a bit heavier on that side because we want it dulled down. Next part, we are swapping over to white. Now, this is essentially to re-undercoat some areas because I'm going to go back over them with a wash, but I want that white showing through because it adds a bit of brightness to the area. So for that, it is a wee spot on the eyes, like so. And I have deviated from the, I guess, movie paint scheme on these because I really wanted to show that these plasma rifles were sort of futuristic. This area that I'm doing with a white is supposed to stay metal, but I'm going to have it as a glowing green, so I'll get those done. Now we get to the part that I absolutely hate. So I've got some watered down bone colour, so it's an off-white, because what we have to do is paint in the teeth. Yeah, that's alright. Now that the white has had a chance to dry on these, let's get on with the ink. I'm going to start off with a green, and this is for the plasmas. A line there, and a line there. And you can see how the white is kind of showing through underneath, which is exactly what we're after because that's what sort of brightens it up. It's eyeball time. This is going to be the last of the painted colours for all of the miniatures apart from the heavy weapons ones, because I want to do a little bit of a touch up around their weapons just to get them looking different. Now I did say that the red was the final coat of paint. That didn't mean it was the final colour. Here is a cheat. This is a black fine liner, and I just want to add a little bit of definition to those vent holes, and because this has got a nice point on it, this is what I'm going to use, just like that. And as you can see, it is all nice and quick, far quicker than I would be able to do it if I was using a brush. Sometimes while you're painting, things occur to you. Now, just going back to these crawlers, that's the one that is in the standard paint scheme for the rest of the endoskeleton. This is the one that I did with a flesh wash, and this is the one that I did with a black wash. And you know what? For damaged ones, I actually like the looks of these better than that still sort of bright chromy colour. So I'm going to take a little bit of time and I'm going to do half of the crawlers in the flesh and half in the black, just to give, because it looks, you know, more dirty and damaged. Coming back to these heavy weapons ones, let's go for the flamer first. Now, what I do not want is that flamer looks like it's just come off the factory floor, so we are going to apply a bit of weathering around the barrel just to make it look as if it has actually been set off a few times. And this is just a bit of sponge, and I'm just going to dab it on just to discolour or start discolouring around the end of that flamer. Now I could dry brush it, but for this kind of weathering I find that a dab with a sponge actually works better, and we can see already it's just starting to dull that down as if it's been used. A bit more sponge, new colour, and this is a grey, so it's sort of like more ash if you like. And you may be wondering why I haven't particularly allowed it to dry. It's because, well, I don't mind if the colours merge in, because it is supposed to be sort of more of a natural effect. Now this time I'm not going all the way to the back like I did with the tan colour. I'm going only about 2/3 of the way forward so that I get a nice graduation of colour. And then I'm going to swap to a black for the very final part on the end, just like that. And then the very final thing on this one is just to paint in the barrel at the end with a circle, just so we know there's a gun there. And that's him done. And the last one on the heavy weapon, just black in the barrel of this rocket launcher. And that, my friends, is the force done. So there we have it for part 1 of the Terminator Genisys Slow Grow Challenge, at least for the Skynet forces. Next time I'm going to be tackling the Resistance. So if you want to hit like and subscribe and follow how I'm getting on, or join in yourself, you know how to do the social media things. Until next time, you guessed it, I'll be back.